How would you like to win this 18-inch variable speed Porter cable scroll saw? Stay tuned and I'll show you how. One of the emails I get pretty often at the scroll saw workshop is, can you tell me which scroll saw I need to buy to get started in the hobby without spending too much money? Well, a few years ago, Scroll Saw Woodwork and Craft Magazine reviewed this scroll saw as one of the best entry-level saws that was being manufactured at the time. So I wanted to do my own review on this saw for quite some time, so I thought I would take this opportunity to review this saw for you and let you know some of the positives and negatives that you might have with this entry-level saw. Now, the good news about this is that Russell Clarity over at simplywoodencreations.com is sponsoring a contest for scroll saw artists for the month of October with the theme of Halloween. And at the end of the month, he's going to be giving away a ton of prizes, so everybody should try to, get an entry in there and have your chance to win. The Scroll Saw Workshop will be donating some of my pattern books, plus I will be donating this Porter cable scroll saw as one of the prizes. What we're going to do is we're going to open the box, take just the saw out, do a review on it, and then we'll package it back up nice and neat and have it available for whoever wins it at the contest. So with that, let's get this unboxed and take a look at it. Let's start out this review by talking about the specifications of the saw. The specifications can be really important depending on the type of projects that you plan to cut. So let's talk about a few things. The first thing that you'll see on the box is that this is an 18-inch scroll saw. And when they're talking about that, they're talking about the distance between the blade and the back of the throat, or where the upper and lower arms connect. And on this particular scroll saw, that's 18 inches. Now, in my opinion, 18 inches gives you plenty of room for nearly any project you're going to be cutting. Probably every project that you see on my blog could be easily cut on this size saw. The next feature we'll go over is the type of blade that this scroll saw will accept. There are two types of scroll saw blades, pin in and plane in. And as fretwork cutters or fine detail scroll saw artists, we want to use the plane in blades. They allow you to go through much smaller entry holes and generally are easier to find also. This machine will accept both types of blades, but I highly recommend that you buy some high quality plane in blades such as the Flying Dutchman brand, the Olsen brand, or some of the better known brands of blades. It will come with 5 blades. I wouldn't use them, I'd just throw them out right off the bat and get you some higher quality blades. Another feature that this scroll saw has is the ability to tilt the table for your angle cuts. In this case, you can tilt the table 45 degrees to the left, which is more than enough for anything you're ever going to do on a scroll saw. It also has the ability to tilt 15 degrees to the right. But one nice feature about this saw is that it does have a positive stop back here that stops it when you come back to the right at 0 degrees, which is really important. To get to the 15 degrees to the right, there's a simple little screw that you turn over here on the right side of the saw, and it releases the stop and then lets you, tilt the table the rest of the way 15 degrees to the right. Another feature added to this saw is the hold down bracket. Now, most serious scroll sawers take this off because once you become more comfortable with the saw, the odds of you having a problem that where you need this hold down reduce quite a bit. And to be honest, the injuries that you receive off of a scroll saw are basically band-aid type injuries, so they're not that big a deal. This hold down will work. It's fairly flimsy, but it will help hold your workpiece down as you're cutting, and it does help keep your fingers away from the blade. So if you're new to scroll sawing, go ahead and leave this on until you get more comfortable, but for the most part you're going to end up taking this off eventually. It makes it harder to get the blades on with this in the way, and it makes it harder to sometimes get in on these really fine cuts you're going to want to make. So not trying to take a safety feature away from you, but just being honest that most people remove these, and if it were my saw, I would remove it. Two more important features that this saw has that makes it a nice entry-level saw It does have an air blower that's repositionable to blow the dust away from the cutting hole where you're at, which is very handy for having good vision on the cut. It is long enough that you can position it forward of the cut and have the dust blowing backwards as opposed to having it blowing towards you. So it is long enough for that. It also has this little LED light that's repositionable, and it has an on-off switch up here on the top. And the light is small, but I find it plenty bright enough to make your work surface easy to see. All the user features of this scroll saw are positioned up front, which is something I find very handy. I've never liked the machines where the tensioning knob is in the back, or some other features sometimes will be back there also. So you do have your on-off switch up here. Your variable speed dial is right here in a handy location. The on-off switch for the light is right there. So everything is up front where you have easy access. A unique feature of the Porter cable scroll saw, and one that I haven't seen on any other saw, is this dial indicator, which tells you where you're at when you tilt the table. So it goes to 45 degrees obviously to the left and 15 to the right, just like the table. I don't know that I find that useful at all. Generally I'll use a protractor behind the blade if I want to be accurate in that, and I'm not sure how accurate this is. They did do a good enough job, I think, of recessing it down below the surface of the table that it won't snag on your workpiece as you're cutting. But my general preference would be that they had left this off. But it's there, and maybe you'll find it handy. Let's talk about the table of this scroll saw. The table's probably adequately sized. It's about 12.5 inches wide, and let's see, 20 inches from front to back. That compares to, for example, the Excalibur back here. The width is 13.5 inches, a little bit larger than this. And the DeWalt scroll saw, which is another pretty common scroll saw for users, is 16 inches wide. So this is a little smaller than some of the more expensive saws, but I think it's plenty adequate. As far as the front to back dimension being 20 inches, again, that's more than enough. So table, pretty nice. It feels like it's cast aluminum. It's smooth. I think it might need a little wax on it to make it a little smoother, but it's okay. This particular saw has this insert that you can remove to help when you put blades in and take them out. I don't want to take it out right now, but it's a little bit too much trouble. But these inserts have a tendency to get nicked up a little bit if you don't have your blade tensioned real well. So be careful with that when you're, if you're applying a lot of side pressure or back pressure, you might actually get into this plastic a little bit. But I'm sure that's replaceable. The machine is variable speed, and it is adjustable between 500 strokes per minute all the way up to 1500 strokes per minute. So again, most saws have a sweet spot where you'll find the least amount of vibration in the saw. Other than that, I generally recommend turning it up as high as you can to especially cut thicker wood. Sometimes you have to slow it down a little bit to prevent burning on the side of the wood, but you've got plenty of adjustability here. If you're cutting very thin wood, sometimes you'll want to slow it down, and at the low end of this speed, it's really slow. 500 is something I would probably never use, or very seldom. So, but it's there if you need it. So it is variable speed, and I think that's a good feature. Okay, now let's talk about a feature that is probably one of the more important features of a scroll saw, and that's the method that they use to hold the blades in place. Now, on this Porter cable scroll saw, they use two methods because they accept both the plain end and the pin end blades. In both cases, they have a lever here on top that not only releases the immediate tension to the blade just by pulling it back like that, but you can also turn it to increase the tension that you're going to apply once you clamp the blade back down. The blades themselves are held into the blade clamps by screws. So there's a thumb screw on this side of the blade, and on the bottom also there's another thumb screw. And what you do is you release those thumb screws and the blade comes out. Now, one of the features that you'll find on the higher end scroll saws is that the blade change is very easy. In general, the lower the price of the scroll saw, they tend to be a little tougher to put blades in. And this is one example of one that I think is a little bit of a challenge. So I'm going to show you in a close-up here how I do it. This might be a little bit of a challenge to get the camera angle to where you can see everything I'm about to do, but also keep in mind that I would be removing this hold down bracket, which would make this job a little easier than it's going to look in this video. This particular clamp, blade clamp, and the one on the bottom pivots back and forth. And on the higher end saws, this is designed a little differently, where this is fixed while you're putting the blades in, and makes it easier to do. So what I do to make it a little easier is I take my scroll saw blade, of course you want the teeth pointing towards the front, and I get it started in the top clamp first. Let me kind of maneuver this around here. And what I'll do is loosen the thumb screw, put this finger behind it to kind of hold it in place. Then I'll take my thumb and put it on the bottom of the blade to hold that blade in between it. Then I can turn this thumb screw to tighten that blade up, and this thing doesn't want to pivot back and forth on me. So again, I just put the pivot finger right behind the blade clamp. I put my thumb of my right hand on the underneath the blade clamp, but pushing back on the blade, and then I also use my middle finger right below my index finger in the back to help support it. So then I can, right now with my thumb down here on this blade, I can hold that blade in position without this piece rocking back and forth, and then I can tighten down this blade clamp. Okay, so then once I have it in the top holder, and again I've got the tension released up here when I'm doing all this, I can reach, let me see if I can change the camera angle here just a little bit to help this. I can't quite get down that far. I'm basically going to do the same thing on the bottom. You do have enough room to get your hand into the left side and on the right side. So you're going to look down through the table, get the blade started, and hold it with your left hand and tighten the clamp down on the blade. So again, this particular saw, this is a little bit of a challenge, but this is one of the trade-offs that you face, you know, with a entry-level scroll saw. Now, I'm not saying you can't do this, because you can. I've had it in and out a few times, and it's not really that big of a problem. So once you get your blade in the two clamps, then we'll talk about the tension. Now we have our blade loaded between the two clamps, and of course we have no tension on the blade. On this Porter cable scroll saw, all the tensioning is done up front here. And this lever gives you immediate tensioning just by locking it down. And you can see now we have a nice taut blade. If when you got this lever clamped down you had too much or too little tension, when you pull this back up, this knob turns. And as you turn it, it changes the distance, you know, between the arms and makes it tighter or looser. So you have very quick, once you get the tension set the first time, the ability to release and put the tension back on the blade, and this is a great feature and one that you don't often find on entry-level scroll saws. What you're looking at right now is the tabletop of my Excalibur EX21 scroll saw, and this is a higher end scroll saw, runs about $1,000. So we're going to use this as a comparison to the other machine, the Porter cable. What I have right here is I have my iPhone 6 Plus setting on the tabletop, and I've got a seismometer running, application running, that we can look at the vibration of this saw. So I'm going to reach down here on my foot switch and start the saw up. And if you watch closely, you'll see that the seismometer is registering a certain amount of vibration. And what we're going to do is take that over and compare it to the Porter cable. We're back over at the tabletop of the Porter cable scroll saw, and I've got the same seismometer application running on my iPhone, and we'll take a look at this. Now keep in mind that I do not have this saw bolted down. This saw does come with a stand, and the stand will help reduce vibration a little bit, so we might not have an exact reading here, but I think you'll get an idea of what we're talking about. So I'm going to turn this saw on, and I've got the variable speed set at approximately the same setting as I had the Excalibur scroll saw, and you can see from the indicator that we have maybe 25 to 50% more vibration, but with the fact that this is not bolted down and not on the stand, I think it's pretty comparable to the Excalibur, which is impressive. It feels slightly rougher, but not enough that it's going to affect your work in to any great extent. I think you could easily cut fine fretwork with this saw, and the vibration is not going to be a big problem. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to look at this saw making some cuts. I've got some 1/4 inch thick Baltic birch plywood, and I've got some scrap, looks like it's about an inch thick walnut. And we'll cut both of these and just see what I think about the ability of this machine to make cuts. We'll start out with the 1/4 inch plywood. I'm going to turn this down to just about 50% speed. I'm going to bring my blower over, and that seems to be doing a fine job of clearing the dust away. Okay, that worked pretty well. I was at about 50% of the speed of the saw. I did notice that the blade was deflecting just a little bit, and I did have one case where the piece lifted up on me a little bit, but both of those are more my fault than it was the saw. So I would say at 50% it cut pretty well. I'm going to turn the speed up a little bit, and we'll try again. At about 75% full speed, this saw cut much better. So again, sometimes you have to find the sweet spot of the saw, but that was a much better cut that I just made there in that plywood. Let's go to the 1 inch thick walnut here and make some cuts with it. And this time I'll turn the light on and position it to where we got a good look at our work surface. And let's start this up and see how it does. Turn the variable speed all the way up. At 100% full speed, this saw experienced little to no extra vibration, which is pretty good because even my Excalibur vibrates a little more at full speed. It cut through this walnut like butter, and again, this is about 1 inch thick walnut, which is probably as thick as you're going to cut on a scroll saw most of the time. In general, I was pretty impressed with that cut. Okay, let's do a wrap up of this review and just talk about an overall picture of this saw. Again, this is an entry-level saw. It'll cost you $199 plus tax, and it's sold at Lowe's hardware stores. So it's readily available all over the United States. It has all the features that I think you would need, with the exception of a foot switch. I always recommend a foot switch, and those are pretty easy to purchase online. It has upfront user controls, easy blade tensioning. It has the dust blower and the work light. Those are all nice features. It has a decent sized table to hold your workpiece. It does tilt 45 degrees to the left, which is more than enough, 15 degrees to the right, which is adequate. It has a positive stop over here for your zero that you can adjust. That's handy. 18-inch throat, plenty big enough. The one feature that I would talk about that I find a problem on nearly every entry-level scroll saw, so this is not really a knock on this saw, it's just a knock in general. Replacing the blades will take some practice. Once you get it down, I think you'll be fine with it. You know, play with it a few times to get your technique down, and once you get it down, that won't be so bad. Now, also keep in mind that when you're cutting a project, you're only replacing blades, you know, every so often. Most of the time, you're just releasing one of the clamps, either the top or the bottom, depending on how you like to thread the blade through the entry hole. But to just have to remove it from one clamp, thread it through your entry hole, and then reclamp it, that's not that big of a problem. So even though I find this annoying, it's not a deal killer. It's just that. It's just annoying, and something I think that once you practice with a little bit, you'll be fine. The motor on this saw seems to provide plenty of power. It cut through this 1-inch thick walnut with no problem at all. It did not stall. It does have a slow start motor, and I'm not sure if that's a feature or just the way they designed it, but it does take a second for that motor to come up to speed. If you're inside of a cut on, say, like a thick piece of wood, I'm not sure if that's going to cause any problems if you've already started the cut before it comes up to speed, but just something to be aware of. I didn't find it a problem, but it was something I found interesting and that I noticed. The fit and finish of this saw is one of the best that I've seen for a sub $200 saw. This one's not quite sub 200 after you pay taxes, but we'll pretend like it is. It's made well. It has a little bit of heft to it, which is going to help hold down the vibration. There's not a lot of plastic on the saw that is in areas that I think it's going to be a problem. So the fit and finish I would give probably a B. The upfront controls I would give an A. The general usability of the saw I would give a B or maybe a B minus, just because of the again, the problem with replacing blades on these entry-level saws. So all in all, I give this saw high marks. You do have some feedback in the online forums of people that have had trouble with this saw. Again, every manufacturer puts out, saws that are not up to quality control when they go out the door. But you do know that if you're buying from Lowe's, you're buying from a place that you can take the saw back to and either return it or get a replacement. So that's, that's a good feature in itself, is you're buying locally and you have the ability to take it back without any problem. I did not assemble the stand, so I can't speak to in this review how easy or difficult it is to put together, but it is a good feature to have a stand, and I always recommend that you mount your scroll saw on a stand. It will help reduce the vibration of the saw. So when you put the stand together, make sure you get all the bolts nice and tight, and sometimes it's even nice to put a shelf on the bottom rungs and throw a little weight on top of that to help minimize the vibration. Again, this saw doesn't have a tremendous amount of vibration to begin with, so a little bit of dampening is probably going to be more than sufficient for what you're doing. So I give this saw a B+ as an overall grade, and if you're just getting started into the scroll saw hobby and you don't want to spend a bunch of money, I would say start out with the Porter Cable. It's a fine saw. Now let's talk about the contest again. Russ Clarity over at simplywoodencreations.com is sponsoring a contest. I'm going to clean this saw up real good. I'm going to put it back in the box. I kept all the packing material and everything in good shape, so I'm going to put it back in there, seal it up. It'll look like new when you get it. And this will be one of the prizes that I'll be donating to his contest. So his contest is going to be a lot of fun. You will make a holiday themed or a Halloween themed project, and you will post either a video or a photo montage of the project on YouTube and send Russ a link, and that'll be your entry. If you don't have a good video camera, and almost everybody does these days, if you've got a cell phone, it's probably got a video camera on it, and that's going to be fine for doing your videos. If you don't have a video camera to do the project, take pictures, digital pictures of the project while you're at the different stages of it. Put those together in a video format, and you can find easy software to do that. If you need help, yell at Russ or yell at me, and we'll help you get started on that. Put a video together of the sequence of events of putting it together. Now the project does have to be cut 90% on the scroll saw. Obviously you can, thickness your material at your planer or whatever you need to do with the table saw, but the primary project has to be done on the scroll saw. Now he's lined up several different places to provide prizes for this contest, so a lot of people are going to win prizes. So make sure you go sign up. I mean, hey, you're going to do some projects over the month anyway. Why not, win something for it? And with a little luck, maybe you can win this scroll saw. If you do win this scroll saw and you're an advanced scroll saw artist or you've got a nice saw, one thing that I would love to see happen with this saw is use it to get someone else involved in the hobby. If you're a longtime scroller and you've had a friend or a relative who's expressed interest in the hobby, give them this saw. Let them get started. Be someone's Elmer. Be their mentor to get them started in the hobby. It's a fantastic hobby, as you probably already know, or you wouldn't be watching this video. So why not get somebody started in it and give them something that they can enjoy for the rest of their life. Okay, I'm going to end this review up here. I'm Steve Good with the Scroll Saw Workshop. Visit my blog at www.scrollsawworkshop.blogspot.com. You're going to find thousands of free patterns, software, you name it, it's all over there. So go take a look at my blog, and we hope to see you next time here at the Scroll Saw Workshop.